What's up, everyone? I'm Reggie Casual, and today we're asking the question, who's the real fashion king in Asia? Japan, Korea, or China? This has been a long time coming, I know. But note, forgive me for butchering Korean and Chinese in this episode. I do not know these languages nearly as well as Japanese. But before we get started with that, let's get a word from our sponsor, Squarespace. If you've been thinking about turning that fashion idea into something real, whether it's a brand, platform, or just a place to build community, Squarespace is where you start. This isn't just a website builder. It's full-on brand building toolkit. You got stunning templates that don't look cookie cutter, built-in e-commerce so you can sell your pieces, members areas to build loyalty, and email campaigns to keep your people in the loop. All of it under one roof. And now with Blueprint AI, it gets even easier. Just answer a few quick questions about your style, your goals, your vibe, and Blueprint builds a custom layout tailored to your brand's identity. Fonts, colors, flow, it's all curated for you. No more blank canvas, no overthinking, just build and launch. So when you're ready to go from idea to execution, head up squarespace.com/thecasual to get 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Build the brand, build the community, do it all with Squarespace. So if you ask the average fashion fan today, specifically right now, the answer seems obvious: South Korea. I know that may seem crazy coming from somebody like myself if you know about the content, but from K-pop's explosive influence to Seoul Fashion Week's growing presence, Korea feels like the cultural engine of Asia right now. Idols like Jennie, Taeyoung, and Lisa are walking billboards for luxury brands. TikTok is flooded with Korean get ready with me aesthetics, and fast-moving platforms turn trend pieces into viral commodities almost overnight. Meanwhile, Japan is often seen as the elder statesman, the birthplace of avant-garde icons like Comme des Garçons or Yohji Yamamoto and Issey Miyake. But in 2025 and on, Japan doesn't feel like it's running the show. Its brands are quieter, its retail scene more inward-facing, and its global visibility more niche. China, on the other hand, is the elephant in the room. It's the largest luxury consumer base on the planet, yet its domestic fashion ecosystem feels splintered. Western brands still hold enormous power, and while independent Chinese labels are emerging, they haven't fully coalesced into a global recognizable format or movement. Historically, these perceptions stem from each country's fashion evolution. Japan's global breakout in the 1980s with designers like Kawakubo and Yamamoto had challenged Paris and redefined the avant-garde. Korea, still rebuilding from decades of occupation and war, developed a nimble, trend-responsive industry in the 1990s and 2000s, heavily influenced by the results of the Korean War. China, meanwhile, surged into luxury consumption after economic reforms in the late 1970s, but domestic creativity took longer to solidify. So, the surface narrative goes like this: Korea is the trend leader now, Japan is the heritage purist, and China is the money. But as always in fashion, the surface story isn't the full story. If you look deeper into the culture, psychology, and behavior, the picture of who's really king starts to shift dramatically. To understand the current dynamic, we have to go back to the foundation of each country's fashion culture. Japan's fashion identity was built on post-war scarcity, craft, and philosophical detachment from Western trend cycles. This is why brands like Visvim or Black Means can thrive without mainstream recognition. They sell to people who value quality and ideology over hype. Japan's retail culture, with its iconic multi-brand boutiques and archival shopping habits, reinforce this. Over time, however, Japan began to lose its edge with younger generations. As global fashion trend cycles sped up, Japan's slower, heritage-driven approach often felt disconnected from the immediacy that Western consumers, especially Gen Z consumers, craved. Many Japanese brands have eschewed heavy exportation, focusing instead on domestic loyalty and niche international markets. This has contributed to the perception that Japan no longer defines something like streetwear, even though it still influences it profoundly. South Korea's fashion culture, by contrast, grew out of rapid modernization and a collective obsession with modernity and global relevance. After the Korean War, the nation rebuilt itself on speed and competitiveness. That psychology bleeds into its fashion industry. Brands are trend responsive, influencers hold power, and the aesthetic is clean, polished, and hyper-attuned to Western tastes. In fact, a 2024 report by Euromonitor estimated that Korea's fashion exports grew by 12% year over year, largely because of its ability to remix global trends quickly. Western consumers feel comfortable with Korea's output is what we're saying here. It aligns with what they already know and desire, amplified by the star power of K-pop and their idols. China, meanwhile, has a complex relationship with Western fashion. For decades, luxury goods were status symbols tied to wealth and upward mobility. That's still true, but Gen Z consumers are starting to demand more originality. Brands like Shu Tong or Samyo Guiyang or Uda Wang, hopefully I got all those right, are building unique aesthetics rooted in Chinese culture, yet these labels exist in a market dominated by Western giants. LVMH's revenue from China alone accounted for 33% of its Asia-Pacific sales in 2023, according to Statista. Western consumer perception of each country's fashion is also telling. A 2024 Business of Fashion survey found that 61% of Western consumers associated Korean fashion with trend-forward accessibility, making it the most relatable of the three. Japan was seen as niche and intellectual by 48% of respondents, reflecting its heritage-driven positioning, while only 29% felt that they could identify a Chinese fashion brand at all, despite China's massive spending power. These perceptions influence media coverage and retail expansion strategies. Western buyers are more likely to stock Korean labels like Adder or Anderson Bell because they fit familiar silhouettes and price points. Japanese brands from SS Stein to Oral-Lee are seen as long-term investments and often enter Western markets through select high-end boutiques, maintaining exclusivity. Chinese brands face the toughest road, needing to educate consumers while fighting stereotypes about quality. Now, these factors reinforce why Western audiences instinctively view Korea as the leader today, even though influence, originality, and financial weight tell a more complex story. What's interesting is that visibility doesn't always equal leadership. Korea's fashion looks like it's winning because it's synchronized with Western media cycles, but that same responsiveness can also make its fashion feel derivative. Fashion at its core is about identity. You all know that. So, what identities are Japan, Korea, and China projecting? Well, Korea, for example, is signaling we belong. Its polished K-pop aesthetic, aggressive branding, exportable trends are about proving that Korean culture is global culture. Japan is signaling we define ourselves. Japan's fashion exists in its own ecosystem where loyalty matters more than mass appeal. When a brand like Comme des Garçons puts out a collection, it isn't trying to trend on TikTok, it's reinforcing its long-term narrative. That restraint gives Japan its cult-like mystique, but it also means it doesn't always dominate headlines. China, on the other hand, is signaling we've arrived. The country's luxury spending is astronomical, but much of it is still chasing Western validation. But speaking about Japan specifically, the former undisputed leader in Asian fashion, after COVID-19, Japan's grip on Western fashion ideologies weakened even further. Designers leaned harder into refined craftsmanship, modular silhouettes, and cultural continuity rather than fast-moving, hype-driven cycles. Think graph paper, think Oral-Lee, even Capital to that degree. The result is a perception gap. Japan has grown up stylistically, but Western audiences often don't know how to categorize it anymore. Now, if you zoom out, the unspoken truth is this: Western fashion still dictates much of the global system. Even in the countries that we're talking about right now, Western brands dominate heavily and frequently outpace domestic brands. For example, LVMH, Kering, and Richemont's combined luxury brand portfolios accounted for over 60% of the luxury fashion market share in China in 2023, according to Bain & Company. In South Korea, Louis Vuitton, Gucci, and Chanel consistently rank among the top-selling brands, often eclipsing local labels like Adder or Woo Young-mi in revenue. Japan is no different. Western brands such as Dior, Prada, and Hermes hold a strong retail presence and outperform many domestic players in sales volume and global visibility. This dominance has reinforced Western aesthetic standards, making it more difficult for domestic brands to build scale internationally and further aligning consumer preferences with Western-driven narratives. But Japan arguably doesn't care to. Korea is trying to, and if they are not, they are doing a terrible job at hiding it, and China is building an infrastructure to do so eventually, as with everything that China does. Seriously, just get ready for China to rule the world in like 10 to 20 years. Learn Chinese or like move to a mountain or something. One of those things. Now, this dynamic mirrors bigger cultural truths. Korea's global alignment reflects its broader geopolitical strategy. This is beyond fashion. We're talking beyond fashion now. Basically, their strategy is be indispensable to the world. However, Japan's independence reflects a society that values internal coherence over external validation. China's split identity reflects a nation balancing tradition, nationalism, and global ambition. In fashion, these differences play out in how trends spread, how brands scale, and how consumers engage. But here's the thing, the West's grip is loosening. Younger consumers in all three countries are experimenting with hybrid aesthetics that don't neatly fit into Western frameworks. The next fashion king might not be crowned by how well it aligns with Paris or Milan, but by how it confidently defines its own rules. So who's the fashion king of Asia? Well, people want to know my answer, but the answer just depends on what metric you care about. If it's visibility and synchronization with the West, Korea wins, hands down. It's not even a contest. If it's philosophical influence and long-term cultural impact, Japan still holds that crown, and that's the camp that I'm in. And if it's financial power with the potential for future dominance, don't sleep on China. And I certainly won't. I mean, have you seen some of the outfits coming out of China stylistically? They are out cold, like crazy. Don't sleep. Don't sleep. As we used to say, the real way, stay woke. Not that crazy wokeness that everybody was talking. I don't know how that came to be. Just don't sleep, all right? Just take notice. I should just say that. Take notice, since you want to take slang words and change the meaning of them. It's just crazy. Ask a person who knows. Anyway, I'm going on to the end of this. But maybe the real takeaway is that there is no singular king of Asian fashion anymore. Fashion has decentralized. I mean, power isn't just about who sets the trends. It's about who controls the narrative, the community, and the culture. And maybe that's more important than trying to figure out, the best one. I don't know, we like doing these contests anyway, so that's why we did it. But I want you to know, and that's why I'm gonna hand it off to you to answer the question. Who do you think really leads Asian fashion? According to you, does visibility matter more than originality? Or is the real king the one who doesn't even care about the crown? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you want deeper case studies and brand breakdowns, join me on Patreon, where we go even further behind the curtain and learn how it all coalesces together, learn how it all works. But be sure to like, sub, and turn on notifications. But most importantly, keep it locked right here for all of your info on international fashion culture and business from Tokyo. It's your boy, and keep it casual. Yoroshiku onegai shimasu. And I will see you all in a minute.